Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Marketing Mix. Gosh, 2 weeks seems to go really quickly. Today's topic is quite a hot topic. I know quite a few people have contacted me and said, "Oh, that's good. I'm wanting to hear about that," which is PR. I know loads of small businesses want to know how they can do more PR of their own, because it's a really great way to raise awareness for your business. So today I'm joined by PR expert Ceri. Is it Ceri or can I call you Ceri or Ceri-Jane?
Ceri's fine.
Ceri. I've put Ceri-Jane on everything. Ceri, who is the founder of Cerub PR. So I'm just going to hand over to Ceri to tell us a bit more about her and her business.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you, sort of. Thanks, Manal, for having me. Yeah, I'm Ceri-Jane Hackling. I run Cerub Public Relations. We have been running for 19 years now, which is a bit scary. I know. But we work with a really broad range of companies, ranging from charities to engineering companies, to manufacturing companies, to business specialists who want thought leadership. So we have a very broad range of clients, which is because before starting Cerub, I worked in a number of different organizations. And it's actually helped us to bring a wider view to the clients we work with. So we're based in High Wycombe, and we're a small team, small but perfectly formed though.
Of course, and small businesses are the best. So congratulations on staying small, but very, very, customer driven and full of experts. So I can see people are joining. If you are watching live, do pop a hello in the comments so that we can see who you are. And of course, as we go along, if you've got any questions for Ceri, do pop those in the comments as well, and we'll get through as many as I can. But I've got some questions right now for Ceri. So until you start thinking of your own, I'm going to get on and ask Ceri what I'd like to know about PR. So first things first, people think about marketing, and typically when they think about marketing, they think about social media. But PR is a really important aspect of a part of the toolkit that small businesses should use. So can you tell us a little bit more about why you think PR is so important for small businesses?
Oh God, where to start? PR is absolutely. PR is everything you do fundamentally. But when you start a PR campaign or working with a PR agency, it's a more formalized way of doing it. So the reason, for small businesses particularly, the reason PR can be so effective is because it's a lot more cost effective than advertising. We worked with a client, and I'm not telling how much she paid, but she paid us to promote her book and promote her as a thought leader. And we got her into the Daily Mail online. And from there, we had inquiries from the China Daily Post. She was in Indian newspapers. We had phone calls from Australian television shows wanting to interview her. You just couldn't get that from advertising.
Yeah.
You can spend £1,000 on PR, and it could go completely mad, or you could spend £1,000 on one advert and it's not going to work. Now, ideally, you'd have a mixture of adverts and PR and advertorials. But, small businesses don't often have the budget to do all those things. So if you've got a good story, PR is the way to go. The other thing about PR is that it's more credible. So if you've got a third person, i.e. journalist, saying this product is great or this company is great, that you're more likely to believe it than if you're advertising, which is essentially you're saying, I'm brilliant.
Yeah.
So in terms of credibility, it's far more effective. If you look at someone like India Knight, who writes the beauty pages in the Style magazine, in the Sunday Times, I've done it myself. I read her column and I've gone straight online to buy the product, but it's sold out by the time you go, because her endorsement is so valuable that you instantly go, right, okay, that's the product I absolutely need. And it's the same with thought leadership things. If you're reaching out to trade audiences, if you've got an article in the press, it makes you look like a trusted person because someone has commissioned you to write an article about what you know. And so it's just so valuable from that perspective as well.
So you mentioned story, and I know that like for DIYers, small businesses that perhaps haven't quite got the budget to work with an agency, how do they start formulating their story? What's the first thing that they should do?
I think the challenge for small businesses, and I think we have this ourselves actually, which is ironic, but it's when you're working in your business day to day, you forget what's interesting about your business. And it's only when you take a step back and you can go, oh, what are people interested in, that you start to realize. So a good way to start for small businesses is actually to hook up with somebody also running a business and just share all the things that you do, because they're going to be going, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, that's how it works. Oh, I see. Because when you do it day to day, it's just second nature. You don't realize that what you're doing is special or interesting. And so by sharing what you know, somebody else can actually say, oh, that's really great. I mean, we've had that before. We had a client who did crowd management, and he thought that all he did was crowd management. But actually, when you really drilled it down, what he did was save lives. You know, he helped places like Wembley Stadium learn how to manage their crowds better or improve their crowd management.
Right.
Which fundamentally is down to saving lives. And it was only when we kind of pointed it out that he was like, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that, because he did it every single day.
Yeah.
And that's part of the battle. It's kind of, you almost need to sit down with someone and have them ask questions. It might be someone you know or somebody that's also in business, but if someone else asks you the questions, they can draw out what's interesting. And that's part of the joy of a PR agency, actually. It's because it's our job to find those interesting stories and ask the right questions. But if you sit down with somebody for a morning or a few hours and just have them ask you the questions that they're interested in, you can identify what's interesting about your business.
It's interesting you should say that, because this is Yasmin. Hello, Yasmin. Yasmin runs the hairdressers that takes care of this. It's a very arduous job as well. But Yasmin, just recently, the salon was nominated for 2 awards, and Yasmin asked me to sit down. I coach her on her marketing, but she asked me to sit down and help her gather the evidence that they needed for her to put forward to say why they should win.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it's exactly what I did. I mean, I know them very well because obviously I'm there every 6 weeks. But she said, so I said, so what about this? And what about that? And then other things started coming out. I was like, oh, that's great. You should put that in. And that's great. You should put that in. And they won.
Congratulations. So that's exactly it.
Yeah, it's a really good tip to sit down with another business owner and just for you to sort of download, if you like, what you do, because if someone else finds a particular thing interesting, then that, I guess, that is a hook to get others like them interested. I'm very happy to have Dee here today. Hello, Dee.
Hi,
welcome.
Dee.
We know
the famous Dee.
Yes, the famous Dee from our Facebook group. So that the story bit is really interesting. And is that one of the things that really helps you get into publications, and how do you target the publications that you'd like to appear in?
It very much depends on who your audience is, what the media is interested in. I mean, it could be anything. So, I mean, Dee obviously was on Dragon's Den, so that would be a great story for her local media and for social media. Some of our clients want to be seen as thought leaders in their field. So we're working with a guy at the moment who's an expert in agile working. So he is, we are pitching him to the trade titles that he wants to target, which is telecoms and engineering. And we're pitching him as a thought leader, and we're coming up with topics that are affecting those industries that he can comment on as an expert. So it's almost a case that you need to read as much as you can about the industries you want to target, whether it's consumer. I mean, it's even down to things like, you know, who is your target audience? Because if you are a hairdresser based in London and you're not necessarily going to have people coming down from Scotland, there's no point doing national PR. You know, if you're somebody who's selling products nationwide, then national PR is good. But you really need to understand the media that you're targeting and what it is that they want. And that's when research comes into it, because you could spend hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, days, in fact, just targeting everybody, but actually you'd be wasting your time. So you're better off actually having a very clear idea of your story, your target media, what kind of things they're looking for. I mean, look at what your competition is doing as well. You know, if your competition is being featured left, right, and centre, and you're thinking, well, why aren't I? Look at what it is that they're doing and who it is that they're talking to. So it's about knowing your business inside out. It's actually what we were talking about before about getting that story. I always think of it a bit like the Harry Potter wand, you know, and they put the wand in someone's head and they draw out the information and they put it in that sort of font thing. And then they put the head in, they can see the whole big picture. And I always think of it as being a bit like that. And I'm fully aware I've just deviated from the original question.
Okay.
Very enthusiastic about this subject, obviously. But yeah, it's basically about, doing the research and knowing your target audience, knowing who you are, knowing what your story is. And the only way you can do that is by actually researching those magazines and titles and TV shows and radio shows you want to be on.
And you mentioned, if your business comes from the local area, does local press operate differently to national publications, or would you do the same level of research for those as well?
Well, I mean, so for example, when we've won awards in the past, we've written a press release and sent it to the local press, so it's a slightly different thing. It's more that if you're talking about local newspapers, they're interested in news stories. So it's things like, award wins. It's things like fundraising. If you're doing any fundraising for a charity, those kind of things can be interesting. But they have to be very local.
Yes.
They've got to be very targeted. I mean, we're working with a charity right now, and we're doing lots of regional press for them. And the hook for that is that the children that the charity supports get granted wishes by this charity. So it's about a child from a certain area being granted a wish. So that's where the regional side comes in. So you've got to read the newspapers, and you've got to make sure you know what's going on. But they're very interested in regional news stories as opposed to thought leadership.
Oh, that's timely for Dee, who says she's been trying for the longest time to get into the local press without any success. So those tips are great in terms of kind of being laser focused and it being a completely local story. Is there anything is there somewhere that you can find journalist details for local press, or can you approach them directly?
Yeah, if you Google the name of your local press, the name of the newspaper or whatever it is, then you will generally find a contact us. And if there isn't a contact us page, there will be a phone number. So you can just ring up and ask for the news desk details and get their email address. Now, I'm interested in Dee actually saying that, because obviously Dee was on Dragon's Den, so I would have thought that would have been interesting to the local press.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing is some of the local press, so for example, I'm in Buckinghamshire, so our Buckinghamshire local press, they're not bombarded with stories constantly. Things like if you're in London, it's much harder to get into the London press. So if you're in a big city, it is tougher, but particularly London. I mean, the Manchester Evening News, for example, would be something that might be interested in that Dragon's Den story. But yeah, I'm really interested in why that hasn't happened for Dee. Even radio, if you can, looking up your local radio station. So our BBC local station is BBC Three Counties. And what they do is they have different business shows. So you need to look at their schedules and see what programs they've got running, because they might have a business show, they might have an environmental show, they might have a consumer affairs show. And once you can, so what used to happen with us, they took the business show off, unfortunately, but they became used to the fact that we were reliable guests. So they used to get us on as part of a business panel every few months to debate the business issues of the day. So once you've got a foot in that door, and once you've got that sort of reputation as a reliable, trusted source of comment, and that you're somebody who is happy to be on the radio, they'll come back to you time and time again.
So there's a tip for you, Dee, to get on local radio, because she's got such a lovely personality. It seems a shame for it to be hidden away in printed material. You need to get yourself on the radio.
Well, if you've got an interesting story as well, I mean, because sometimes it's not even about the business, it's about how the business started. So I was talking to someone earlier today, and she was talking about a client of hers who's got a really interesting backstory about why she came up with the business that she's come up with. So it wasn't just a kind of, I run a business that does X. It was actually, she was a single mother whose son or daughter was dyslexic, and she's come up with this amazing product. So sometimes the backstory can be what gets you into the local media or into the radio stations and things. So those stories are really important.
So many women now have got such interesting stories about how they started their business. There's her name's gone straight out of my head. I had it in my head just then.
I'll remember it in about 20 minutes.
I know. She's in that Facebook group we're both in. Rian. Her clothing business is called Bibivi, and she designed. It was after she had a baby, and her baby's bibs would never stay in one place, so she designed a bib that stays on the front of the baby where all the drooling happens. But it comes from personal experience, right? So you end up solving a problem for yourself, but then you don't realize it's a problem that you're solving for so many other people too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and you mentioned when you won awards, you sent press releases. So a press releases, like awards aside, are they relevant for any other approach to the press?
Press releases are very news focused. So if you are approaching the local press about an award or about a TV appearance, which is obviously what we've been talking about, then a press release to the local press would work. If you're talking about launching a new product and it's a new food product, then something like The Grocer, the trade magazine aimed at the retail press, is a good publication. But press releases tend to be very news focused.
Yeah.
So it's new products, new services potentially. If you've been hired, if you've won a contract for a big company, so PR Week, for example, will accept press releases about PR agencies that have won a new contract for X, Y, and Z. Those things are quite useful. So if these products were to get into Tesco, that would be a press release that would go to the grocer. We work with an animal health company that launches new products. So when we've got those new products, we send that information to the veterinary press. So yeah, it's not suitable for everything, but if you have a news story about new products, services, charity, awards, then the press releases can be really useful.
Cool. And would you send that to a journalist in the same, like just directly to whoever's the named contact?
Yeah, so local press tend to have news desks. So the news desk is best because that reaches everybody basically. Yeah. But if there's somebody specific that at a paper, then just send it to them. But send it as the body of the email rather than an attachment, because for people to open attachments, they find really annoying. So write a short introductory message just saying, thought you might be interested in the press release below, then the press release, and then send the images if you have images to go with it. And images are important actually. So if poor D is being picked on here as an example, but if Dee has an image of herself on Dragon's Den, that would have been a really nice picture to accompany it, but send it as a link rather than as a JPEG. So send it as
avoid attachments.
Yeah, because it jumps out there in boxes.
That's such a good tip, because I've sent stuff to local papers for like a local initiative I'm doing, involved in for small businesses, and I've sent attachments, and I should have just put it in the body of the email. So that's a really good tip.
You need to make it as easy as possible for them, because there's I know local papers are really struggling right now. So if you can make it as easy as possible for them to access the story and the image, you're kind of halfway there, because if they've got it right in front of them, they don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
And ideally, they will just copy and paste the press release and put it in.
Okay, so basically make it as easy for them as possible.
Yeah.
So Dee says, thanks for the free PR.
I was excited to see her on TV.
Yasmin actually has managed to get herself on local radio and in local papers, and quite a lot of that has happened around the whole like hair salons opening up again after COVID, because they were even our council recognised them as having done absolutely everything humanely possible to make their salon COVID safe. So that was a really good story for them, because even now, my first visit into their salon, it was during the lockdown periods and during the in-between periods when they were open. That was the only public place that I felt safe being in. So it kind of speaks to volumes to that. So
well, actually, on the subject of local business groups, most areas have a local enterprise partnership. So I spoke to Coast recently, which is the Brighton one, and they're going to hopefully be using one of our clients as a growth advisor, which means he will be used on their website. But they often have newsletters that go out to however many thousand businesses. So our local enterprise partnership has a newsletter. I think they've got about 12,000 members. So if you submit their news or your news or press releases to them, that's a good way of getting the word out, as your hairdresser said. Yasmin, was it Yasmin?
Yasmin, yeah.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, investigate local enterprise partnerships, because actually you can get grants for them as well. So from them, they have
interesting.
So that's worth looking at. But yeah, they can be a really good source of information and dissemination of information.
Yeah. And it's there is no. I've not been able to find a local enterprise partnership for London. I think there's one big organisation, I forgot what they're called, whose mailing list I'm on. I'm not sure that they work in the same way. And London is such a big space to cover for one organisation, because there's just different wants and needs in different parts of London.
It does tend to be the regions that are more engaged with the LEPs, like Berkshire, Buckinghamshire, where we are. That sort of those smaller counties are better equipped, I think.
So one question that's just occurred to me, which might help people listening, is I've seen quite a few businesses that put together a press kit. So can you explain why you would want to do that and what you would put in it?
Do you know, we haven't put together a press kit for years, actually. No. Probably because the kind of clients we work with, but also, I mean, back in the day when I worked in London, we used to do press kits for the trade press, but that would involve a product and a press release and kind of an information sheet, or maybe if you're a fashion company, a lookbook. But we tend not to do that. We tend to have press releases, and then we follow up with journalists. But press kits, I actually don't know any PR agencies that do that anymore. I feel like I need to ring my friends now and check.
Maybe because I've seen them on a couple of people that I know, but they're not PR agencies. They've got them, like, they're coaches or consultants like me, and they've got them on their website. I was like, that's interesting. So
you can put your press releases on the site with images that people can download and things. But most of our work, because we're working on behalf of clients, we go out rather than getting people to come to us. But we do ask, get clients to put their press releases on their sites from time to time. But God, I can't remember the last time I did a press kit.
Wow. I mean, years ago, I'm talking
10.
How long ago? More than 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I worked for a company where when we used to do trade shows, we'd have more than 15 years ago, actually, nearly 20 years ago, we used to have a press kit at the trade show in the stand to give out to journalists that came to the stand. If there was no one on the approved list of people that could speak to media, if there's no one there, we would hand out a press kit to them. Susan says, great tip about the LEPs. So she's hopefully you're gonna go and check out Solent LEP and hopefully find something to do with them. Susan, I saw your photo on LinkedIn as well of your husband. You both looked great at your was it the Navy do that you went to? You looked amazing. So just wanted to mention that. So any last tips in terms of, like, top 3 tips in terms of if you're going to do it yourself before you can, and I do recommend, I'll put a link in a minute, I do recommend working with an agency because they know what they're doing. But if you're at the point where you haven't got the budget, top 3 tips about what people could do to get themselves PR.
Oh dear, 3 is so small. You need to know your audience, who is buying your product, because you might think they're a homogenous mass, but actually if you break it down, there might be age groups, there might be gender, there might be there might be certain industries, there might be, if you're selling direct to consumer, or if you're selling to stores, or if you're selling locally, there's going to be some kind of commonality running through those. So know who your audience is and what they think they're buying from you. Also do the research into the press that you want to target. Just watch the TV shows, listen to the radio shows, buy the newspapers, buy the magazines. I mean, I'm working from home today and I'm looking around, and if I showed you the state of my table, it's got newspapers everywhere. I mean, literally, thanks, because we still have to research everything for our clients and make sure we're not missing an opportunity. And I think one of the most important things actually is not to be scared. People are very scared to do their own PR. Small businesses think, oh, well, no one's going to be interested. It's a bit embarrassing. I don't want to blow my own trumpet. But if you don't do it, nobody else is going to. So really take that time to talk to your friends and talk to your colleagues and find out what is interesting about your business. And then once you've done your research, you can see the kind of things the media works with and is interested in, and you can start to sort of push that message out. But, you know, you've got to crack on with it, because you could spend forever just, you know, hiding your light under a bushel. But, you know, get on the phone, email the journalists, build relationships.
And do journalists pick up the phone?
It's more difficult than it was, actually, because people are working from home so much more. But you know, we still put the calls in and talk to journalists. So if you can get hold of them, I would recommend calling after you send the press release. They say they don't like it, but that's sometimes how it works. I had someone the other week actually saying that I rang him about a story, and he said, "Oh, when you first mentioned it, it sounded really boring, but you've just made that really interesting." So it's those kind of conversations that mean you can put your enthusiasm into it and find the angles that they're looking for. So it is more difficult than it used to be to get on the phone, but I'd still give it a go.
Brilliant. So Yasmin, I'm not the only one who tells you to just your toe in the water, try it. What's the worst that can happen?
Well, exactly.
They might say no. The worst that can happen is they just completely blank you, but they might come back and go, "Not this time, but that's interesting. We'll keep in touch."
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? So, honestly, you're right, Ceri. If you don't blow your own trumpet, who's going to do it for you?
Yeah, unless you hire people like us.
Of course. And on that note, we'll put in their website. So if you want to go check out Cerub PR, that's linked to their website. Do go and have a look. There's quite a lot of interesting case studies on there of clients that you work with that I've read. So go and check them out. And if you do pick a PR agency, pick one that I've introduced you to. It's always nice to work with people that you already know. Thank you so much for joining me today, Ceri. It's been really interesting to hear your thoughts. And PR is just one of those, it makes me feel a bit like, I don't know that I could do it. And I've been in marketing for 20 odd years, but I've always had agencies that I worked with and of course, because they're experts, they know what they're doing. So doing it yourself is scary, but have a go. I think it's
scary but worthwhile.
Yeah. So in 2 weeks' time, people, I'm going to be joined by my friend Jen Corcoran, who is a LinkedIn expert. But what she's going to be talking about is how introverts can make the most of LinkedIn and how they can make it work for themselves. So it's a really interesting topic. You may not think it, but I am a little bit of an introvert. So I'm looking forward to it. But again, thank you for joining me, Ceri. And if you want to watch this back, it'll be on my Facebook and my YouTube channel. And if you're watching on playback, let us know. If you pop a comment in the post a comment or post a question, we'll be sure to go and answer that for you. So I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Take care. Thanks a lot, Ceri.
Thanks, Manal.